Hello, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. A nomination to Broadcom Masters is a huge honor. We are glad that you have taken the next step in the Broadcom Masters process by opening your application. I'm Reva Ramadurai, Program Manager for the Broadcom Masters, and I'm here with my colleague, Erin Cummins.
Hi.
We are responsible for the Broadcom Masters program, and you will receive emails from us throughout the application process. Today, we're going to go briefly over the application process, talk about available prizes, and then take questions from all of you. This session is being recorded so that other students who cannot join us today can also hear this information. We want to show you that the application is not a scary process and can even be fun. We are always here to answer your questions. Email us at masters@societyforscience.org at any time. If you have questions today, feel free to type them in the live chat box on the right-hand side of the screen. Erin and I will take a few questions at the very end.
So let's get started with some basics. What is the Broadcom Masters competition? The Broadcom Math, Applied Science, Technology, and Engineering for Rising Stars, or Masters, is the premier national science fair-based competition for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. Under normal circumstances, in order to qualify to enter Broadcom Masters, a student must place within the top 10% in a society-affiliated science fair. However, as you may have heard, this year we have opened the application to any middle school student that was registered to participate at an affiliated fair this year. We know many students have faced unique circumstances this spring, and so we felt that any student who would have competed at their fair deserved a chance to apply. This is an incredible opportunity, and so we definitely encourage you to make the most of it. If you haven't opened an application already, however, you will after this webinar. Ultimately, 30 Broadcom Masters finalists have the opportunity to spend a week in the fall in Washington, D.C., showcasing their research projects and competing as teams in hands-on STEM activities.
So now we are going to talk about the application, but just briefly. For a more in-depth overview, we recommend that you check out our videos about each section in the Video Resources tab in your Fluid Review account. So first, just some general advice. For logging in, you need a username and a password from your fair. So if you don't have this, you can email us at masters@societyforscience.org and we'll help you out with getting started with creating your application. Once you create your application, you'll see that there is a section called Designated Adult. So here we want you to add a parent's or guardian's email address. So make sure that you add one if you did not use a parent or guardian's email address to register your application. Moving on, the first part of the application is part 1, formal registration. So here we just ask for some general demographic info about you and your school. Some information in this section is used by our communications team if you're selected as a top 300 masters or a finalist. But the important thing to know about this section is that it is not used in the evaluation of your application. So evaluators do not see this section.
The next section is part 2, project information. So in this section, you will notice that we have word limits, and we have those to help you practice concise writing, which is very valuable now and will be in the future as well. It's all right if you don't use all of the words in the word limit, but just know that you cannot go over the word limit. The system will not allow you to save your work if you've gone over. To answer these questions, think of it like a judging interview. If you're feeling stumped, just imagine the questions that a judge would be asking you and how you can work through them. Think about how you described your project either in person or virtually, and that can help you get the ball rolling. In terms of picking a category, we might have categories listed that match the one that you chose for your science fair, or we may not. If we don't, just try to think of what expert would best understand your project. This is really just to help make sure that we have the correct people reading your application. The next section is the visual aid. We get a lot of questions about the visual aid, and also we do have videos of each section of the application that we walk through individually. So if you want more detail on each section, check out our videos on those. So the visual aid is a place where you are able to represent your information in a graphical or data or picture way. What we would like for you to do is to reference your visual aid in your project information section. So if you're describing your data, you can say, I saw that X plant grew more than Y plant, and you can see this in figure 1 of my visual aid. And then the evaluator would know to go to your visual aid, see figure 1, and that would help them just get a better understanding of what you're talking about. So this is not a place for you to expand upon your essays from before. We really don't want to see any text other than things like captions, you know, the titles of different categories that you have in a graph or something like that. We also don't want to see any pictures of your face. I'm sure they are lovely, but we don't want any identifying information to be given to the evaluators. So if there are any pictures that you include, please make sure that they do not include your face. Again, if you have more questions on that, you can either email us or check out our visual aid video.
Okay, now moving on to part 3, the essay questions. When you get to this section, you'll see there are 2 different prompts, or 2 different questions rather. One is about me, and one is solve a problem. And each of these prompts have, or each of these questions have 2 different prompts for you to choose from. Basically, in this essay section, it's just a chance for you to show your creativity and your unique ideas on how to solve a problem. You do not need to do lots of external research for either questions. The judges just want to see how you think organically. For part 4, the personal interests, the judges do see this question and they want to know what you're passionate about. You'll notice that not all the questions are required in this. So if you don't have, for example, any summer camps or internships that you've been a part of, you don't need to fill it out. So just take a note of that when you're going through this section. Again, the judges here just want to see what you're interested in outside of your research project. Lastly, we have part 5, which is new for this year, and this is a personal essay question about COVID-19. So this section is not used at all in the evaluation of your application, so the evaluators will not see it. It does not contribute to your overall score. But we just want you to be able to use this as a space to reflect on your experiences this spring, think about any challenges or problems you might have encountered, and if you have creative solutions to them, we want to know. So again, this section is not seen by evaluators or judges.
The next couple of sections are pretty straightforward. So next we have the science fair paperwork section. All projects should be following the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair rules. You might not have heard that term directly, but if your fair is affiliated with us, then they are following those rules. So what you'll do when you get to this section is use our fair paperwork wizard, which will walk you through finding out whether or not you owe us paperwork. So you'll fill out where you did your most of your project, and then we ask if you used any of the things listed below, so like human participants, vertebrate animals, things of that nature. If you check anything other than none of the above, then you will owe us paperwork. This is paperwork that you should have filled out for your science fair in order to compete. Maybe you turned it into your teacher, maybe you turned it into your fair director. If you have a way of acquiring that paperwork, please do so and then upload it here. If you didn't fill out paperwork and you think that you needed to, Have your teacher write a letter explaining that they approved your project, why they thought it was safe, and then you can upload that in this section. If you have any questions about that, please email us at masters@societyforscience.org. The next section that you'll come to is the parent permission form, which we don't have a slide for, but when you received your packet of information, either in person or digitally, it would have included a parent permission form. We also have this available digitally within the application in the parent permission form section. What we ask you to do is just print that sheet out, have a parent sign it, and then either take a picture of it, scan it, whatever you have to do to get that into a PDF form, and then upload it in that section. Very simple. And then after that, you should be done with your application if you've gone through all of those steps. And then you just need to hit the submit button. So you do have to hit submit in order to actually submit your application. You'll see the progress bar at the top will then say 100% once you've hit submit. Otherwise, it'll say, I think, 87.5. So just make sure that thing to note is that you still can go back even after you've hit submit, and you can continue working on your application, tweaking anything that you might need to up until the deadline of June 10th. So you don't need to like hit submit again. It will just save automatically the changes that you have made. If you want to confirm whether or not your change is saved, you can download your application, which is an option that's available up in the right-hand corner below the taskbar once you've submitted your application. Then you can download your whole application and make sure everything is there that you want to be there.
So now we're just going to go over some general FAQ that you might have that we may not have already gone over. So the first question is, do I have to enter the same project that won the nomination? So yes, if you actually did have the chance to compete at your local affiliated fair this year, you should be entering that project to Broadcom Masters in your application. But if you faced any unique circumstances with completing your project this year, we know not all of you had the chance to participate in your fair and actually earn a nomination. You can email us with those questions about whether or not your project is eligible. Above all, we just want to make sure that you're conducting your research safely and that you had the proper approvals in place to do your project. The next question, can judges see how much time I spent? Nope, they cannot see how much time you spent on your application. They don't see when you've submitted it. So as long as you submit it before June 10th, you are good to go. The next question, I was a part of a team. What should I do? So each team member must submit their own application. The reason for this is that Broadcom Masters is about more than just your research project. It's about you as an individual. So the judges want to get to know how you understand, how well you understand your project and how you describe it. So each team member should submit their own application. Can you add to your project? Again, this is a little bit of a unique circumstance this year. If you've competed at your local science fair and won a nomination or submitted your project at all to your local science fair, you can only do trials, more trials of the same thing. We don't want anything that changes the intent of your original project. Again, if you weren't able to complete your project this year as you originally intended, email us to let us know and we'll help you out.
All right, let's talk about prizes, you guys. We're going to talk about the different prizes you can win in different stages of the competition, which I know is what you've all been waiting for. So you guys are awesome. You're going to be applying to Broadcom Masters as nominees. So that's step number 1, which is completing a science fair project. Great work. So let's talk about what you would get, what you will get for submitting your application. So the next step after being nominated is to open your application, which hopefully most of you guys have done. And if not, that you'll do it when this video is finished. So now we're going to be, we'll be emailing you helpful tips and tricks to nominees who've opened the application throughout the application process. So the sooner you start, the more you know. The next phase is to submit your application. The application is due this year on June 10th, 2020 at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you submit on or before this date, your application will be judged and you'll be considered for the top 300 masters and finalist levels. Submitting your application is a huge step. We know the application does require some work, and you're sharing your awesome research projects with us that you've worked so hard to accomplish. To award you for that, all entrants will receive a prize package containing a bumper sticker and an awesome book of invention stories. The first 5,000 entrants will also receive a special Broadcom Masters t-shirt. So though you have plenty of time to work on your application, we encourage you to submit early to get your t-shirt. When you complete your application, you also join our alumni family. As an alumnus of our program, you'll receive invitations for special opportunities such as webinars, panels, and events. This allows you the opportunity to meet many science-minded people just like you.
So the top 300 masters will be named on September 2nd. And we're very excited this year to announce a new prize. And that is that each student that's named one of the top 300 masters will receive $125 through our partnership with the Department of Defense. The Society is a member of the Defense Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Education Consortium, or DSEC. And so we are super excited to offer this new prize for all our top 300 masters this year. Top 300 masters also receive a certificate, a ribbon, a special invention journal courtesy of the Lemelson Foundation, and lots more. Some of that is listed here on the slide, and some of it is going to be a surprise. So teachers of the top 300 masters also receive prizes. They get the book of invention stories that all entrants received, and also a cool Broadcom Masters tote bag. So this is a great way that we try to give back to the middle school teachers that helped you out throughout the school year.
So now let's talk about the finalists. Out of the top 300 masters, 30 finalists are selected and will be announced on September 16th this year, 2020. Finalists receive an all expenses paid trip to Washington, D.C., as well as $500 per finalist, and finalist schools will receive $1,000 to go towards STEM programs, which is really awesome. Finalists also receive lots of cool swag like shirts, different from the one that nominees receive, jackets, backpacks, and so much more. You also will make best friends for life. These are 30 students who are very passionate about STEM and have gone on to do amazing things afterwards and will remain friends over time. We hear from a lot of finalists who still stay in contact. This is a great time to also mention that the entirety of the Broadcom Masters program is absolutely free to students. There's no cost to submit an application, and if you're selected as a finalist, there's absolutely no cost for a finalist and their parent to come to Washington, D.C. for finals week. All travel, accommodations, food, etc. is completely covered.
So now we're going to talk about some of the prizes that we offer at finals week. So this is a long list of all of the big prizes that are available to the top 30 finalists once they compete during finals week. So one thing you might be curious about is how the judging works during finals week of the competition. So there are two main components to judging during finals week. First, students will present their research projects to judges and the public at our project showcase. And then students compete in teams to conquer various STEM challenges or hands-on activities that you work on together and creatively to problem solve. So it's very challenging, but also a lot of fun. Our judges are looking for leadership skills, the ability to be an effective team member, how well-rounded you are in your STEM knowledge, and creative thinking skills. So after the judges observe you during the team challenges and also hear what you have to say during the project showcase, they select finalists for each of these awards. So each finalist may receive only one award. So for example, you could not win first place in both the science and math categories. But students may receive awards in categories that their project might not be in, since judging also depends on your performance during challenges. So there's no need to feel like you couldn't win an award just because your project didn't focus on it, on a particular topic. For example, if we might have challenges that deal with medicine or health sciences, and your performance on that task could help you win, for example, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Award for Health Advancement. So there are tons of good prizes here. The Rising Star Award is one that I want to point out that is awarded to a 6th or 7th grade student. This is the only award that you can win at finals week and still be allowed to compete at Broadcom Masters in the future. And this is an experiential award. If you win it, you will win the chance to represent the United States at Broadcom Masters International, which is a program that we run during Regeneron ISEF in May. Like I said, I'm not going to go through each individual award here, but you can find this list also on our website. So that concludes the presentation section of our webinar. We want to make sure that everyone who enters Broadcom Masters feels really proud of their accomplishments, feels confident, and encouraged to submit their application. So even if you do not win the final prizes that are listed here, just know that Broadcom Masters, as Broadcom Masters nominees and entrants, you make us all so proud through your eagerness to change the world through STEM. So now, probably one of the things that you guys are all waiting for, we're going to take your questions live. So Erin and I are just going to take a couple minutes to read through some of the questions that you all have posted, and we will start answering them.
I will start out by saying, please do not spam the chat function. If you asked a question, we have noted it and we will try to get to it. So please let everyone have a chance to ask a question. Thank you.
So one of the first questions that we got is, do we have to take a video for the judges to grade? The answer is no. We actually do not have a section of the application where you can upload a video. Remember that we don't want any pictures of your face or anything that is identifiable in the visual aid section either. So no, you do not have to take a video. Along those lines about the visual aid, if you put a link in the visual aid, judges and evaluators will not be able to see it. So no, do not put any links or any links to external websites or anything like that in your visual aid or elsewhere in your application.
There's a question about, can I submit a new topic which is different from my regional science fair? The answer to that is no. You must submit the same project that you entered into your regional or state or local science fair. And this is because those projects have been approved by your teacher, by your fairs, by whoever it is, that they're following certain guidelines. So you must submit the same project.
It looks like we got a question about patents. There is a question in part 1 of the application that asks if you are in the process of securing a patent for your project or invention. The reason we ask this is just, again, for our communications team. Sometimes they just want to know a little bit extra about you and your project so they can talk about that if you get to the top 300 masters or finalist levels of the competition. So this is not for us to use your ideas or anything like that. It's just so we can help promote you and share what you're doing if you make it to those farther stages.
Next, we have a question about the visual aid. Do engineering logs or raw data count as a visual aid? So absolutely, yeah. If you find that a data table or a raw data in some format would be helpful for the judges to see, you can absolutely include that in your visual aid. Again, as long as it's not like paragraphs of text. If it's something in just like a concise sort of data table, recounting of information, you can absolutely use that in your visual aid.
So we got another question about which parts of the application do the judges see and count towards your score. So again, the only sections that the judges do not see are Part 1, which is the formal registration, and new for this year, Part 5, which is the personal essay question about COVID-19. So everything else the judges do see. So the information on your project, Part 3, the essay questions, Part 4 about your personal activities, and also your visual aid. Those are the sections that the evaluators will see and use to evaluate your project.
Okay, now we have a question about writing style, which is an interesting question. Someone asked, should the application be written in the formula style of writing without pronouns, or are pronouns acceptable? You guys can absolutely use pronouns. You can be formal if you'd like to. It's totally up to you, whichever way you think best represents you and your project, and any information that you wish to convey. We have no set guidelines on that. So whatever you feel most comfortable with, go for it. We have a question about, again, the visual aid and what qualifies as a caption. Can you have text like labels on a diagram within the visual aid? So yes, absolutely, you can have labels on diagrams in your visual aid. Text like that is totally okay to use. What we're really trying to stay away from is having paragraphs of text. A caption should be no more than probably 2 sentences. Again, that's not like, you know, a hard and fast rule, but what we really want is just to have short little sentences at the most to convey your information, but we want to have really just visuals here, less words, more pictures. And if you have specific questions about that, again, you can always email us.
So we have one question that was, how do you know that you received a nomination? So typically at your local or state science fair, you would get a packet, what's called a nominee packet that has all the information about the application in it. This year is a little bit different. You might have received that packet at your fair if you were able to participate, or you might have received it digitally from your fair directors. But this year, just know if you were registered to participate at an affiliated fair, then you are eligible to enter the competition. So if you did not get any information from your fair director yet, just email us at masters@societyforscience.org and we will help you out.
Someone asked about, I'm going to combine 2 questions. So one here is about teachers and whether or not they have to fill anything out. No, you should be able to fill all of this out on your own. There is a section that asks for the name of your teacher, of a middle school teacher. So that is where you would list that, but otherwise your teacher does not need to be involved in this application, of course, unless you need to reach out to them about science fair paperwork. And then, can parents help with the application? So you can absolutely have a parent read over your application, or even a teacher or anyone like that read over your application, but we want this to be completely written by you. Our judges are pretty good at sniffing out any extra parent help like that. But again, parents can obviously like help you with things that you don't understand, especially in maybe like the formal registration part. But we really want this to be all from you. And judges aren't looking for things like grammar, punctuation, or even spelling. So really, we want this to come from you, but of course, you can have someone review your application. And that's a great way for when you have, you create a parent account and they can view your application but can't edit it.
And just to add a little bit onto what Erin said, your application doesn't have to be perfect in terms of grammar and spelling or that, but the judges are going to be, reading your application for readability. So you just want to make sure that whatever you're saying is clear and makes sense to another reader. So just be aware of that as you're filling out the application. Again, having a parent read over your answers is definitely something that you can do and will help with that. Also along those lines, we had a question about, can me and my project partners submit the same visual aids? So like Erin said, we want to see, the judges want to see how you as an individual are filling out the application and answering the questions. So we do want to encourage teammates to work on all parts of the applications individually. We know that you might have some of the same graphs or some of the same pictures that you might be using, but it's also about deciding for yourself what is worth including in your visual aid. So you might have to make choices on which graphs or charts or pictures are the most important. And so you and your partner should work on that separately.
Someone asked if applications can be disqualified. That's actually not a question I don't think we've ever had before. We don't really disqualify projects in that way. When I said before, and I think we had some confusion about judges sniffing out parents, I don't mean that a project would ever be disqualified because, let's say they think a parent wrote it or something like that. That's not an issue. So don't worry about if you're an especially articulate student, you're not going to be disqualified for that. Absolutely not.
If you don't see your school listed in part 1 of the formal registration of the application, email us at masters@societyforscience.org. We will definitely get to it. Sorry if you emailed us earlier and we did not answer it, but we check that inbox daily, so we will be sure to add it in there.
I think we'll take just 1 or 2 more. Does that sound good, Reva?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. There's a question here about being in 6th grade and whether or not that counts as middle school. So yep, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students all count as middle school for us. So if you completed your project and entered it into or were registered for a competition this year for the school year 2019-2020, and you were in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, you are eligible as a middle school student.
So I think that about wraps it up for this webinar. So if you had a question, but we weren't able to get to it, email us at masters@societyforscience.org, and we'll be happy to respond to you. Again, we check that inbox daily, and we'll be checking it very frequently as we get closer to the application deadline. Remember that application deadline is June 10th, so you have plenty of time to keep working, but we encourage you to get your submission in there. You can always keep editing your application even after you submit. So don't be afraid to hit that submit button. We hope this webinar gave you a little bit more confidence and eased your worries a little bit before you submit. So thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you again on our next webinar. We'll send out more information in the next few weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.